standing, it gives me great pleasure to bring back to this event once again this year a gentleman who you may have seen on the Rosie O'Donnell Show, the Donnie and Marie Show, or 4th of July at the Hat Show worldwide on the Pops. Ladies and gentlemen, his rendition of our national anthem, Sergeant Dan Clark from the Massachusetts State Police.
Imagine, if you will, the year is 1814. Your new nation is in the fight of its life. You're on a ship. You are sailing towards the enemy, the British fleet. That same enemy that burnt your nation's capital to the ground just a short while ago. Your mission is to secure the release of a beloved physician under the direction of President Myerson. You sail with the British fleet, and under intense negotiations, they finally decide to release this prisoner, who without your help may have been hanged. However, you are kept captive on the flagship of the British fleet, for an attack is about to ensue against your homeland. You stand powerless and in disbelief as the British fleet bombard Fort McHenry with volley after volley after volley through the night. And in the morning, you view the largest American standard, a color, an American flag so large that each star from tip to tip is 2 feet. Each stripe is 2 feet wide, designed specifically for the intent to show the British we are still here. You are so inspired by what has just occurred, you write this next song, which later becomes our national anthem. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the
pleasure to introduce the Vice President of the Massachusetts Wrestling Hall of Fame, national champion, two-time national champion, and current head coach at Boston University. Give a warm welcome to Carl Adams, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening, everyone. My job is very easy tonight. What I want to do is thank everyone for coming to help us honor this year's class of inductees to the Massachusetts Wrestling Hall of Fame. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on Father John McLaughlin to do the blessing, and we'll get on with the show. Thank you very much, and enjoy the evening. This is about the only way to get up here is to be a priest. Jeff, do you remember when I took you, wait a second. You remember when I took you down in college? I just want to say that it's a great honor to be here with a tremendous group of individuals. And I'm really honored to be here. And we are blessed in wrestling to have such a great fraternity. And not just of wrestlers, but of their wives and families. And it's the greatest fraternity in the world. I also want to say that I know we're in Lowell, so I will speak slowly so that everybody will understand me. I've got to sit down. George Kakavis is here. Well, we get in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. We ask Almighty God to send His Spirit upon all those who are here today, on your families. We ask Him to bless you. Bless the greatest fraternity in the world, wrestling, and all the wrestlers who participate. Bless the food we're about to receive, and those who go without. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. I'm all done.
I'm almost done here. It's my great pleasure to introduce the next person who is certainly at home here in Lowell, Massachusetts. He and I spend a few Friday nights down at the Hat Show with the WBZ Free Friday Flicks, and we talk about wrestling and the great community. And George Bossi told me in all the things that he does great on the radio, he also had not too bad an inside trip from what I understand. That's what George says. I know your brothers did. Inside trip? I don't know, no? Oh, okay, all right. Former Lowell High School wrestler, ladies and gentlemen, WBZ morning anchor, Jay McQuaid.
Well, what a night we have ahead of us. And we'll make this as quickly as we go through this as quickly as we can. How wonderful it is, though, to be able to honor people who have achieved such success, not only in their own lives, but people who have achieved so much in terms of contributing to the success of others. At a time when it seems that bad news seems to dominate the media and popular culture, how lucky we are to be able to celebrate tonight the good news of these 6 people. One famous writer once noted that fame comes only when deserved, and then it's as inevitable as destiny, for it truly is destiny. And so tonight, we celebrate not one destiny, but 6 individual destinies. We'll begin that just after we begin dinner. So bon appetit, and we'll talk to you in just a few minutes. Thank you. I'm honored to touch on some personal memories. One of the finest, George Myerson. I'd heard many tales about George when I first met him at the end of his coaching career, but personally came to honor him as a knowledgeable coach who stressed the fundamentals, emphasized exact details, he was able to adapt
his teaching, those of vastly differing abilities. Even more, I was touched by George's humanity. As you can read in the program, and undoubtedly hear from his son Richard, George was a superb wrestler, winning New England championships year after year. One time winning 3 weight classes in the same tournament, something we're allowed to do with those. At national level, he placed second to Richard Feast, who was only an Olympic champion the next year, National Hall of Fame winner, and one of the very best ever. Not bad. He finished second to him. Yet as good as he was, George will and should be remembered more for those wrestlers he helped develop than for his own personal accomplishments. Yet in a very real way, those of us he taught were his personal accomplishments. Now look at whom he taught. Anyone who came into the Union, good, average, and more. Dozens and dozens of New England champions, and several who went way beyond that level. Louis Andrews was inducted last year into this Wrestling Hall of Fame because of the way he coached and taught lessons of life to young men at Old Academy. Max Rappaport was runner-up in the Nationals and later become manager of the Olympic team. Jim Peckham in this Hall of Fame and soon to be inducted to the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. Was an outstanding wrestler with Nationals. Was the member Olympic team, many times freestyle and Greco champion. These are some of the very top who were helped along by Mr. Myerson, as we call him with a great deal of respect. Yet most of us were at a much lower level. Myself, I was a dog, a hard wrestler, a little ability, who because of Coach Myerson and others in the Union was able to win the New Englands a few times. And then tried hard to pass on this legacy myself by coaching, something I'm still doing. You gotta be crazy to coach in 63, but some of us are crazy. Most of the people in this room, if you're wrestlers, are crazy. But you got it. Coach Myerson, that's true. As I said, I had little ability but progressed under Coach Myerson and learned so much, partially techniques, but more important perhaps, a way of teaching systematically and being flexible enough to adapt to the abilities of all the wrestlers. Now there were those at the Union less advanced than me. Some of them were younger, more inexperienced than I, and some my age, that's true. I would imagine some people even more uncoordinated than I. I double-checked to see if this person was going to be here. He won't be. So how many people of you old-timers here from the Union remember Jimmy Dickerson? So you remember? Jimmy, nice guy, but he was slow. Slow physically, slow mentally. No one really liked to wrestle Jimmy because he was so slow. You would fake to one leg and then be prepared, of course, when he brought that leg back to hit the other. No. Jimmy would just stare at you. And it would not be a great wrestling experience. Well, I always tried to get my real workout first, and then at the end, I felt guilty. Someone, yeah, we gotta wrestle Jimmy. So I'd wrestle him. I'd finally be through, and I never forget these stares of several people in this room, and some of you may remember. I would leave and go across the Union basketball court to the locker room. Jimmy would follow me, carrying his little bag, wearing his little beanie. Okay, that's fine. But he also would follow me into the shower, dressed fully, wearing his beanie and carrying his bag, and I would be taking a shower. Now, I don't want people thinking, I hate to say it, I do know what they're thinking, but he just didn't know any better. And frankly, as socially inept as he was more inept as a wrestler. But with George Myerson, George gave him exactly the same attention. After a while, I noticed that he took a little bit more time with Jimmy, gave more instructions, simplified it, and yet the best thing about this was we all saw what George was doing. Jimmy never did. And again, sometimes Jimmy would not even realize that he was interrupting George teaching someone else. But George would still go on. Now, frankly, there was no condescension there at all. And never did Jimmy ever realize that he was treated differently. Now that, frankly, is a great teacher and also a very fine humanitarian. That's typical of George Myerson. Now George was always teaching the fundamentals first, those people who know him. One of the first times I ever came into the Union, I came with a friend of mine who was a sort of hotshot prep school wrestler. He thought he was very good. And immediately, of course, he went to Jimmy, Beckham, and Eddie Haddon, one of the most advanced throws he could get. They were very patient. They showed him the technique. And they patiently went through it with him. Immediately, of course, he zoomed. They knew it perfectly. And starting to do it at full speed. Well, to quote Jim Beckham again, you gotta do the move, what, 1,000 times before you know it, and 3,000 times before you do it automatically. Not with this friend. My friend had 2,995 to go. George had quietly watched the progress, patiently, with his all-seeing eye, and it was an all-seeing eye. Finally, my friend was going faster and faster. It was just too much for George. He came over and took my friend's shoulder and asked, well, what was the angle of your left foot on the setup of that? And my friend goes, oh, what do you mean? Well, at this point, my friend was beginning to learn for the first time a stance. And George made him, he was a hotshot wrestler, made him learn a stance. And after he learned a stance, basic stance, then he could progress to that incredibly sophisticated move, the double leg attack. Well, he did learn that. He did learn something fundamental. Now, George was not restricted to simple moves. When you're ready, he would open up other areas. From George, and also learning from personal pain, thanks again, Jim, from having Jim Patton work the technique on me, ripping my hip apart, I picked up different leg leverage involving driving my hip down, rotating my knee outward, and keeping my foot on the mat. It was very effective for me over the years. But who cares what's effective for me? I wasn't a very good wrestler. Well, once, a while later, a lot later, in 80 or 82, I was helping on a minor level at the World Cup, and I was talking with Dave Schultz. Now, Dave, of course, as you know, probably one of our finest technicians ever. And I was able to exchange some information. Now, obviously, I learned 99% more from Dave Schultz than he ever learned from me. But he didn't learn anything from me. But I was able to pass on some of his technique, one technique anyway, and he used it in 84, and he used it even in 95 in the World Championships in Atlanta. So George did not just teach fundamentals, he also knew more than that. And George's legacy passed on. Only recently, talking to Richard Myerson, did I know that you must earn the right to win. Philosophy espoused by Jim Beckham came originally from Mr. Myerson. This expression, made almost a mantra by Jim, epitomizes so much about the enduring value system of this sport where skill and success must be earned by diligence and incredibly hard work. That this credo was central to George Myerson, and Jim seized on this principle early in his career, reveals much about both men. Both men dedicated to the almost religious morality of a sport that is no mere sport. All liked and respected George and always wanted to show their appreciation. There was one example when George's MIT team was wrestling against Harvard. This is before my time, and probably beyond my understanding, because I'd really sinned. I'd gone to Yale, and that's bad stuff to go to Yale. Anyway, this was, by the way, before John Lee's time as coaching there. And George had coached previously at the Union. How many people can say they coached at both Harvard and MIT? Not many. Because the people there demand only the best teachers. Now, though he is a rival coach at MIT, the Harvard wrestlers, as a Yale man, I was tempted to call them boys, but I probably shouldn't. Knew George from the Union, knew what he had taught them, and appreciated his approach to the sport and life. George was, they say, class act, and actions that may now sound outdated in this modern, hyper-competitive, dog-eat-dog world. After their individual matches, the Harvard wrestlers sat down on the MIT bench to talk with George, showing their respect. Can you imagine Terry Brands going over to talk to John Smith after they wrestled? wrestle a match? I don't think so. This happened time and time again until someone noted that almost Harvard men were over there on the other side. They suddenly saw that came back. Now, a small incident perhaps, but one that reveals the intense respect all had for George. I respected George immensely too, and had many talks with him as a wrestler and as someone who had started to coach at the school level. He gave me much advice, always asked for, and yet that is not the talk I remember best. That advice that he gave me was not asked for, was not pleasant. George was the one who suggested that I hang up my chalk as a competitor. Now think about that. No one wants to hear he's over the hill. Admittedly, I was never a good wrestler, but always wanted to be, always worked hard, always trying to get new knowledge, always take some extra piggybacks up the stairs of the Union, or again, thanks Jim for introducing the insanity, climbing up Blue Hill. But I really wasn't very good. But I was frustrated by not being able to go to a higher level, especially my job as an English teacher. It seemed to be too tough for me. That was an excuse. George took me aside into what I remember as an office stuffed with lockers and suggested very gently that I focus instead on what would be more important, the teaching of wrestling, the lessons of sport to young men. Honestly, and not mentioning himself, he emphasized the model set for me by Louis Andrews and Wilbur Storer as mentors in my life. To tell someone he is not going to go any further to reaching his goals is a tough sell. It is not liable to be remembered fondly by the recipient. How many of us like receiving unwelcome advice, no matter how well meant? I remember vividly I was not upset, but instead, at that moment, not just in retrospect, was touched by the patient, sensitive way of winding the dishes up. That is my finest memory of George Myerson. When he told me that I didn't want to hear. Again, as I stated before, Mr. Myerson was a class act. As Hamlet said of his father, he was a man taken for all in all. We shall not look upon his like again. George Myerson was special in many ways. We honor him tonight.
Much better wrestler than he pretends to be, because I used to wrestle him. I want to keep this as brief as possible and yet say the things that I feel I need to say. And I certainly want to thank everybody for being here. I realize that you have two local people that are extremely important to you, most of you. And I had prepared a speech which is relatively short and says what I would like to say about my father. But if you'll put up with it, and please, those of you that have had food served, go right ahead and eat. You won't insult me at all. I want you to have your food. But I have to tell you a quick story about how wrestling was started in those days of mine in high school. Because there was no high school wrestling in New England. There was some prep school wrestling. And the first time I ever saw a boy my age in a wrestling tournament, an AAU tournament, it was a prep school boy who I had to wrestle. Other than that, we wrestled the men when we were 16 and just beginners. But what happened was several fathers who were wrestlers decided to bring their sons, all about 12, 13 years old, into the union with special permission from the management, because boys under 18 normally weren't admitted. And Peckham happened to be one of them, Mr. Peckham. And another fellow named David Smith, who has spent, since he got out of Harvard, over 40 years living in Cody, Wyoming, teaching the 5th grade of school in the public schools after teaching for a few years in a one-room schoolhouse. And David was a boy from Winchester. I called Dave and wanted to tell him about what was happening here tonight. And David sent me a letter. And I feel I'm really not doing justice to my father. If I don't, I'm certainly not going to try to read all of this to you. But I highlighted just a few things that will take a few minutes, and then I'll give you my own words. In what Dave said, he sent me an article about his father, who I used to work out with. And I'm going to tell you how David's father, Lyman Smith, a Harvard student, a freshman, decided to wrestle. Having always shunned tobacco and alcohol, Lyman became annoyed one evening with one of his less fastidious but much larger classmates and stuffed him bottom first into an empty trash can, leaving him helpless for extraction for close to an hour. Other classmates suggested that Lyman might better use these skills on the mat with the wrestling team. The idea had great appeal to Lyman, and he forthwith enlisted and wrestled on the varsity with varying success over the next 3 or 4 years. He came to love the sport with its myriad variations of holds, escapes, takedowns, and pins, and its demands on practically every muscle of the body. Upon graduating cum laude in botanical studies, Lyman joined the Boston YMCU, the union that you hear us refer to. It's an older forerunner of the YMCA. The union wrestling team, composed of hod carriers, paper hangers, MIT professors, high school dropouts, doctors, salesmen, and led by George Myerson, who should rank with Milo of Croton in wrestling annals, had humbled the Harvard team a few times during Lyman's undergraduate experience. So to hone his skills and gain further experience for competition, he worked out twice a week at the union. Throughout his graduate years at Harvard, and until he decided to move to the Smithsonian Institute to work in Washington, D.C. I think one of the, I'm going to skip some things that I found very interesting that I didn't know. During World War II, my father and Lyman were both too old to be in the Army. And it turns out I knew my father had been an air raid warden in Winthrop, where we lived, but I never knew that Lyman, until I got this, was an air raid warden in Winchester. I also knew that my father had relationships with some men, which I will describe one of, but I never knew that Lyman, the same type of personality, had similar relationships. And one of the most interesting things about Lyman was that, and you have to listen to this, he was the first in over 10 generations of his family, dating back to the 17th century, to leave the state of Massachusetts. They were pilgrims. Now that came from an article in the national or international magazine Botanical Study, because Lyman was credited with all the knowledge that existed at the time of his death, late in his 90s, 7 years ago, on a particular type of plant that exists around the world. And the letter from Dave, to me, with things to tell you, I'm going to just use a little bit of it. He said, I remember when I first met him, meaning my father, and you, in the Union gym. It may have been partly from some earlier accounts of George's prowess for my father, but almost immediately I came to feel that here indeed was a member of the Roman pantheon, the god of wrestling, come down in the guise of a mild man of twinkly-eyed tobacconist off Central Square, Cambridge. And really, nothing ever occurred to disabuse me of this concept. I also noted how the big shots upstairs in the union, the millionaire directors and so forth, always spoke to George with the greatest deference. They, whose business it was to know character, recognized him as a true master of his art. Actually, I believe George knew his subject better than all my Harvard professors knew theirs, which is quite a statement. I remember when a couple of wrestlers working out got into some unbelievably screwed up tie-up and the subsequent moves to rectify the situation, and your father would comment, "Oh yeah, I saw that happen back in 1930-something between Eddie and Maxon. And now this is what they should have done." And you just show it to them. And Davey says he carried around an encyclopedic metal file on every aspect, practically every incident of wrestling. Once, when I caught him alone in his store, I asked him what was the most important single factor in successful wrestling. Congratulating myself on posing such an important intellectual question, I had no idea what the answer was. And I was surprised when George demurred answering it. I pushed and pushed, and finally, he said speed and quickness was the most important, just to get me off that track. It took a while, but I eventually came to realize that he had a holistic concept of the sport that involved an infinite number of holds, moves, counters, and locks, operated at speeds from stationary to blinding.
Ladies and gentlemen, our next inductee of the evening is Bill White, the first official to be inducted into the Massachusetts Wrestling Hall of Fame. And here to introduce Bill White, Mr. Steve Tassini.
Let me start by saying what an honor it is to be part of this kind of event. I look around here and I say, hey, these guys wrestlers are cool. This is really a very huge event when I look around. If you're standing at this point, over there, you can't see that many people. So take a look over there. There's a lot of people here. Really what's kind of fun is I get to talk about somebody very special to wrestling. And the first official put into the Hall of Fame tonight. And let me also add that it's with sincere gratitude that the Hall has actually looked at an official and said, we have somebody so unique, so special, that it's time we put that person and that group into the Hall. Because as officials, our job is to not be noticed. Our job is to be behind the scenes. And generally, that's where we are. So it's kind of thrilling tonight that I get to talk about my good friend, Bill White. Bill has a great resume. If you've read the document that you received today, he's got experience. He's been in the Officials Association since 1974. He was one of the fellas that really got the Officials Association going. Put it on the map, if you will. He's got great depth. 20 some odd sectional tournaments, 15 some odd state tournaments, New England tournaments. He did a lot, maybe almost all of the big matches years ago, and even recently. He's also been a strong leader, certainly in the Massachusetts Wrestling Officials Group. He has helped mentor hundreds of wrestling officials. A lot of us are here today, and better officials because Bill White is there for us. But you know, I want you to put all that aside for a minute. I want you to take that all for granted. Because if you look at the resume only, there's a handful of guys that have the length of service and the depth of officiating, and even some of the leadership that went along. If you took a look at why we're here tonight, and why Bill White's here tonight, made a pie chart of it, all that resume stuff is worth about 25%. There's another 75%, and that's the reason we're here tonight. It's the other things that Bill White brought to the table. You know, when Bill White walked into a gym, the coaches would look and say, "Phew, it's just us against them tonight. We don't have to worry about the calls." When Bill White walked into the gym, the parents would know things are going to be in control tonight. When Bill walked in, even the fans were more respectful. And you know what else? The kids know too. Kids know good from bad. And they knew when Bill White walked in the gym, they might not have known him by name, but they knew this was going to be a good night. I got to tell you though, maybe the most frustrated group, the only frustrated group in the gym, were the officials. Bill got so much respect from everybody that he made the rest of us kind of look bad. There was a time in the state tournament, it was a state final match, and it was a brutal match. It was a great match. It was a tough match. And Billy made a call right on the edge that's just a bear of a call. And I went like this, and my good friend Neil Zonfrelli went like this, and there was a legitimate maniac coach on the sideline. Never said boo. And I looked at Neil and I said, if I ever made that call, I'd be here all night long trying to explain it. Not a word out of the blue. That just goes to tell you that not only was it the right call, but it was the guy who's been making the call that made a difference. But all that too, the most impressive thing to me, the reason I'm really here tonight, is Bill White's all about people. First and foremost, he cares about people, he's knowledgeable about people, and he brought that to the wrestling arena. He knew coaches by name, he knew what they were doing, he knew their jobs, he knew what they were up against. He knew parents, he would talk to parents about their own kids that had graduated 10, 12 years ago and had pretty good insight into what they were doing. He would know kids by name like nobody I've ever seen. And he would talk to those kids and he would know where they were going to school and he would know what was going on in their lives. And to me, when you combine the resume that Bill White brings and the people skills that Bill White brings, that's the reason we're here tonight. I would like you to appreciate Bill White for his efforts over the years.
I'm going to put my glasses on. That's for you, Chris, all right? Never while I start anything. I'm going to try and do this quick, but there are some people that I do have to thank. Let me begin by thanking the committee for this tremendous honor, and Steve for trying to make their nomination seem credible. I certainly hope that he succeeded. To be included with this group of individuals who have done so much for the sport of wrestling in the state of Massachusetts is just beyond belief, and I will forever be grateful and proud. If I could just take a moment to introduce the people at my table, because they're very important to me. You don't need to applaud until I'm done, but I really would like to recognize the table too. Steve and his wife Sharon, my mother Emily, my wife of 36 years Jerry, my daughter Lisa, my son and his Will and his wife Sharon, who drove up from Pennsylvania, and my son Barry with his two friends Tom Landino and Joe Rondeau, who are here only because of the marathon on Monday. Barry and Joe, two of them, just graduated from my alma mater, and in 1 month they will become doctors of podiatry, and they're here to work the medical tent at the race on Monday, so I'm real proud of that. Minnesota wrestling while at Springfield College in the early 60s. I was fortunate to be at a school with the likes of Coach Doug Packer, who was here tonight, Eric Moyer, Matty Sanzone, and John Putnam, just to name a few. They got me started in the sport and did the best they could to make a wrestler out of me. I never could quite catch up to the Springfield guys, but I wrestled JV and did pretty well at that level. But the exposure that they gave me led me into a career that lasted for 32 years, and next to my parenting and coaching and teaching will be the most fulfilling undertaking of my life. I coached with Anthony Ricciardi at Braintree High School for a total of 6 years. We had a number of great wrestlers in those days, and before I left, I had a chance to work with a young skinny kid with red hair named Colin Kilrain. We had a couple of state champs, and we would have had one other Pacelli state champ except for a kid by the name of Dylan George. You remember that? We should have had another one. One of George's kids took care of that for us. In 1973, a new assignment took my coaching away from me, and so I decided I'd try officiating. I took a written exam from Eric Turner, and I came up to the Lowell Invitational, and my practical was taken in front of Bobby Campana and Gene Booley. And that first year, even though I didn't do a varsity match, I did do a sectional tournament, and from that point on, I was hooked. I enjoyed every minute of the next 20 years and have nothing but fond memories of the many matches, the host of competitors I watched grow, and the many officials and coaches that I worked with and have come to know. Not to mention the many fans that I've made acquaintance with. One I can think of most particularly was a woman by the name of Zakili, who was one of my favorite fans. I wish she was here. I learned the keys to top officiating from my illustrious colleagues, several of whom are here tonight. Dennis Mulvihill taught me how to pack the bag to make sure you had an extra pair of pants and an extra whistle and so on and so forth. Phil Grebner was responsible for the rule interpretation. We learned to listen to him, and we also learned not to listen when George gave up to give his interpretation of the rules. Remember that specifically. We also learned that you either call stalling or you don't call stalling. One of the two. Don't ever do both. And finally, we learned when and when not to listen to coaches. I learned very simply that you listen to Howard because he never said anything. And you never listen to George because he never shut up. And if he shut up, one of his henchmen will be making the same comments that he was forced from making. As an officer and executive board member of over 12 years, I had a hand in negotiations that I hope have aided in the contract, the current contracts with the MIAA. My most vivid memory, however, of that whole experience were the two successive votes by the MIWOA membership in 1984. They voted me president, and then they voted to go on strike. And then we went to Reuben, Father McLaughlin, for a Reuben tournament. Remember that well. But the opportunities I had to work with Sherm Kinney and John Piccirilli and Nick Zakili, Bill Zimmerman, Teddy Deal, and the rest were worth the time commitment. I was always proud to represent us, the MIWOA, and its many members that I consider my friends. I'd like to especially thank Phil Gormley, Jack Springer, Chris Pacelli, Larry McDevitt, Kevin Black, Jack Johnson, Neil Zonfrelli, Bill Barrington, and especially Steve Cassini for putting up with this concrete, sequential individual for these many years on the South Shore. Special thanks to Eric Turner and George Bossi for their many kindnesses over the years, to the coaches for their respect and cooperation with me as an official, and for their honoring me with induction into their Hall of Fame in 1994. Let me close with one short story that to me was the most rewarding experience of my officiating career. I was the assistant official for a sectional championship match many years ago, and I was responsible for the changing of a call that cost the wrestler a championship in his hometown. Years later, while officiating a state or sectional tournament, that same individual, now a coach, came to me during the break and said, "Phil, I hope you have my kid in the final." That is what made officiating career to me so meaningful and rewarding. This is but the icing on the cake. Thank you all so much.
ladies and gentlemen, moving right along to introduce our third inductee who could not be with us tonight is Mr. Jim Peckham. The inductee, Mr. Colin Kilrain.
Thank you. I was at Colin's home today, met with his wife, his mother, and his sister. They had all gone down to Florida. Heard that his wife's folks were going to fly up. They've all come down with some kind of a virus. The only one that's healthy is Colin's wife, and she doesn't want to leave this 6-month-old baby alone for a minute. So that's the reason that they're not here. And the family is dire straits, so to speak. I feel deeply honored and proud to speak to you about Colin Kilrain, Commander, U.S. Navy SEALs Team. Colin Kilrain. We first crossed paths about the middle of the sophomore year in Frankie High. He came to my home one Sunday evening looking for a workout. At that time I was running wrestling camp. And Sunday nights young men would show up into the schools chasing the workout. From then on, I believe Colin spent more time at my garage wrestling, lifting weights, climbing the 38-foot rope I had in the backyard, and anywhere else except perhaps in his bed. He was a gifted and inordinately polite young man who over the next 7 or 8 years became as fine a competitor and representative as this state has ever produced. Now it's quite easy to list his accomplishments. State and New England champion, senior at Banquet. Then on to Blair Academy as national prep school champion. And finally to Lehigh University, where he compiled a legendary record of achievement. While there, he became one of only 8 men, 95-year history of the oldest and largest wrestling conference in the country to win 4 EIWA titles. Further, is one of only 2 men to win it at 3 different weights, 167, 177, 190. His senior year is named the Outstanding Wrestler, won the Fletcher Award. John Fletcher, Naval Academy cadet, a member of the 1948 Olympic team, just as an aside, was one half of what I consider one of the greatest matches I've ever witnessed in my life. When he wrestled Bill Nelson of Iowa, finals of the National 88 Championships, 49, the crowd stood and applauded the 2 competitors for the final 5 minutes of the match. It's the only time I've ever seen it happen in wrestling. Reiterating these facts, don't begin to tell you what manner of man, great-grandson of America's last bare-knuckle boxing champion was. To watch Colin at his best was to watch poetry in motion. He was silky smooth, possessed the fluidity of motion that I believe was unequaled by anyone his size. Others were just as strong, aggressive, and as fast. But no one I ever saw would change direction as effortlessly or move from one position to another with the smoothness that Colin. When Colin graduated from Blair Academy, Lehigh was truly big time. So he stayed down in Lehigh to compete and train for the Junior World Trials. Went to the trials, won a couple of matches, lost a couple, came home. When I came home, I said, Colin, what was your training schedule? What was your program? He told me. I said, Colin, I don't like it. You do what I tell you to do. I can give you another chance to make it a Junior World. He said, how can you do that? I said, well, Bill Wick is the head coach. He was my assistant in Russia the year before, and he'll take my word for whatever I tell him. Colin said, okay. So I called Bill and I said, Bill, I think I've got a man who can strengthen your team. He said, did you come out to the trials? And I said, yes. 1, 2, lot of people came home. He said, what weight is it? I said, 180. And those of you who don't know Bill Wick, he's as tough, he's hard-nosed, he's fine competitive as he's ever had. Wick said to me, it's
it's impossible for him to make the team at 180. I said, why? He said, because the man who won trials at 220 pounds, Eric Weiss, who later would win the Division I National Championship at 190 for Oklahoma State, won the trials. And he's cutting to 180 to strengthen my team. I said, I'll put my money where my mouth is. I went out to Michigan, I called up my wife, told her to buy Colin a one-way ticket to make the team for what? What I really wanted him to do is believe that I had faith in him. Colin wrestled that 220-pound champion. At that time, I don't know what he weighed, but he lost 5-4. They wrestled again, tied 4-4. Bill then changed his mind. He said, you've got to wrestle the bracket at 180. So Colin wrestled in order, 7th, 6th, 5th, 4th, 3rd, 2nd best kids in the country, ranked at 180 in that order, and beat them all 2 straight. And he wrestled the 180-pound champion, lost the first match, came back on the next 2. The rest of that 220-pounder game. They tied. They wrestled again. Colin won. Colin had to wrestle again. This is his 20th match, 4 days, against the champions of 2 different weight classes. Colin beat him. Thus, I think, became the only Massachusetts athlete ever win a place on the Junior World Freestyle. Unless you believe that that competition wasn't quite up to snuff, that 220-pound Eric Weiss, as I just mentioned, won the 190-pound Division I national title. The fellow who placed 3rd in that competition came back and beat the 2nd place winner. Ultimately represented this nation at 220. It's none other than our Olympic gold medalist sitting at this table, Jeff Blackton. Colin would go on and rank #1 in the nation for 177 and 190. Beat a 3-time NCAA champion, Olympic gold medalist, and Banquet, 9-5. Have wins over 4 different NCAA champions, and defeat Olympic gold medalist John Peterson in the Middle East. Now a commander in the U.S. Navy SEALs, stationed aboard the aircraft carrier in the White T. Eisenhower. Colin, to me, represents best among us and allows us all to stand just a bit taller because of who we are and what we represent. At this moment, I was hoping I could introduce you to his wife, Lieutenant Commander, U.S. astronaut, Susan Stillcorrect. They have a 6-month-old baby girl, couldn't believe it. That she's got, she'll be the first female president. But accepting for Colin, I had asked Carl Adams to address you on an email that Colin faxed with his wife. Carl Adams is the vice president of this association, coach at Boston University, a former national champion, was voted the best 163-pound wrestler in this nation for the decade of our 70s. Carl Adams.
Try to do justice to this email. This is from Colin Kilrain. Ladies and gentlemen, wrestlers past and present, I am truly honored to be inducted into the Massachusetts Wrestling Hall of Fame. To be recognized for this award, especially in the company of these other inductees who have greatly contributed to the sport of wrestling, is an honor that I will always cherish. Of course, I am deeply sorry that I can't be here to accept this award. Coming home to my roots to receive this award among these who gave me my start in wrestling, and to whom I have much to be grateful for, would have made this honor complete. Although it's been many years since I've wrestled competitively, I still remember with great clarity my experiences during this important part of my life. I I believe them to be important because the values and lessons I learned as a wrestler have had a profound impact on my life after wrestling. Many of these values like fair play, hard work, and commitment were lessons I learned as a wrestler, and they were taught by my coaches, teammates, and by the men I competed against. And it is these values that define who I am now, and not just professionally, but as a friend, a husband, and a father. I am now a Navy SEAL. And you may find it surprising when I say that wrestlers do extremely well in the SEALs training. Then again, you know many wrestlers it shouldn't really surprise you at all. Wrestlers, more than any other group of athletes, excel during SEAL training. This has become so evident that the SEAL teams are actively recruiting high school and college wrestlers. The wrestling room is not a nurturing place to work. Frequently hot and uncomfortable, the training is hard, challenging, very physical, and mentally demanding. Wrestlers, like SEALs, have to learn to live with the discomfort and then dismiss it in order to be part of the team and achieve their goal. Also, wrestlers, more than any other group of athletes I know, are used to pushing themselves to the extremes. I know I couldn't have picked a better sport to prepare me both mentally and physically. Well, I don't mean to make this sound like a recruiting speech. And I admit perhaps the analogy between the life of a SEAL and that of a wrestler isn't a fair one because there are too many similarities. Nevertheless, I still maintain that wrestling is an excellent training ground, not just for SEALs, but for all walks of life. I need only to look at my teammates from Lehigh University to prove my point. Although not all of my teammates were considered accomplished wrestlers, they still gave it their all, sacrificing and dedicating their lives to the sport and the team as much as the more successful wrestlers. Were their contributions to the sport any less? Absolutely not. Do you think they gained values and worthwhile experiences in competing and being part of the team? I believe they did. I believe this to be the unique quality of our sport. Coach Peckham would always say, it's in the way he fights in earning the right, not necessarily whether he wins or loses, that determines the measure of the man. Well, I'm proud to say that my teammates are, by every measure, very successful professionals comprised of doctors, lawyers, professors, businessmen, engineers, teachers, coaches, and even a token Navy SEAL, Colin Kilrain.
Ladies and gentlemen, our next inductee is Mr. Howard Crozier, and to introduce our next inductee is Mr. John Stevenson, the athletic director at North Andover High School.
Thank you, and congratulations to all the inductees up here. They should have put us on first. 40 plus years ago, I had the pleasure of meeting Coach Crozier for the first time. And tonight's probably going to be one of the few times that I'm not going to do what he told me to do, which is follow the lead of the people that go in front of you. As people said earlier tonight, Coach Crozier is a man of very few words. I said, well, I have to say a few things about him because I know that he is such a proud man, but he will not say anything about himself. You can read his amazing accomplishments in the program, but that does not begin to tell you about the man that Todd Crozier is. All of you that are involved in wrestling know that you prepare to win in the wrestling room. You don't win on the mat alone. You have to do the preparation. We've heard about doing things 1,000 times or 3,000 times before you learn them. Todd told me wrestling is a very simple sport. You need about 10 moves. You have to do those 1,000 times in practice every day to perfect those 10 moves, and you'll be successful.
You also know out there as wrestlers that the only place that success comes before work is in the dictionary. You've all heard that. Well, this man works and he prepares, right down to the point of everybody that's here from North Andover tonight probably got directions like I did to how to get here and where to park. And I mean, that's the type of preparation that he has always done in his 40+ years and has made him the success that he is today. There was a sign on the ceiling in the wrestling room at North Andover, and it simply said that if you can read this, you're not doing too well. That's the type of motivation that Crozier gave his wrestlers. It was that simple. He's an influence of everybody that he has come in contact with. I can't believe that, those 40+ years ago that, having him as a physical education teacher to start out with, that, what an impact he'd have on my life to, lead me to where I am today. One of the things he's fond of saying is that, the athletic director's job is the best job in the world, and I like to say that when he had it, it was, and it's changed a little bit over the years. I think his lasting legacy, though, is to the influence that he's had on people. Tom Michadello is a classmate of mine who was a New England champion. I hope he doesn't see the podiatrist in the tent. He's running his 24th consecutive marathon on Monday, and that's because Coach Crozier told me you should get out and run a little bit. So, that's the type of influence that he has. And also, one of the things that I'm most proud of is his coaching staff that he turned over to me. He has 3 of his former wrestlers now coaching at North Andover High School. And our head coach, Dave Castricone, has over 400 wins himself. So you look at the North Andover legacy of the number of wins, and you start to do the math, and you know that Coach Crozier has had an impact in every one of those wins. And it says there's one mistake in there. It said that he retired a couple of years ago. Well, he's retired from track, but he certainly has not retired from wrestling. He's still there. He still has all the respect of all of the wrestlers. At our breakup dinner last week, they all had to come and say goodbye to Coach Crozier, and especially the seniors, and how much he has meant. So it's my pleasure at this time to introduce my teacher, my coach, and my friend, Crozier.
That is true, I don't talk too much. My mother would tell her sister, my son Howard, compared with an Augustinian monkey, is a blabbermouth. I would like to tell you how a woman helped me be here tonight. My late, wonderful wife started having children, 1, 2, 3. Got up to 3, she said, well, maybe you'll have to come home at 4 o'clock and help out. Get up to 4, same thing. So we had an agreement that if she was overwhelmed, just say so, and I would be home and drop all the coaching, all of it, including wrestling, and be home at 4 o'clock and help out. Well, I never got the SOS call, so it went on, and that's why I say, if she had said no, it would have been no. We had a beautiful relationship, but the wife is the boss. The wife that is the boss that doesn't know it. That's beautiful. So we went back to work, and we had exchange meetings, which was very interesting, with people in New Hampshire and Maine, and some of the fun that those kids had, they remember long after the school. And things started to go well. The town was behind us, the athletic department, the parents, everything was going fine. And we did run up a few of those streets. Amazingly, the longer the street went, the harder they worked. Because nobody wanted to be the one that would drop the meat. one other, the 100th win, or $100 loss, was in the field house. The lights went out, everybody panicked, the emergency light came on, that wasn't enough, so they got some cars outside to drive up to the door and put the light in there, and they finished it for 100. So it's a lot of memories by the way. But Jack was right about the present people. The transition for me from head coach to co-head coach to assistant coach to volunteer was very smooth, and they're in good shape. I would just like to say I appreciate that people from North Andover. There's a table over here, and my relatives sitting over here. I hope they're enjoying the evening. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, our next inductee is Mr. John Lee, and to tell us about him, Rick Sullivan, a former wrestler at Harvard and the Vice President of the Massachusetts Wrestling Hall of Fame.
I'm Paul Wooderman. I guess some of you might know me, but Rick and I have decided to split the introduction for Johnny Lee. I will try and speak as quickly as I can to keep this moving along. About 6 weeks ago, I received a call from Rick Sullivan asking if my schedule would permit a trip to Boston as Johnny Lee was being inducted to the Mass Hall of Fame. I didn't think twice about it. I just responded, "I'll be there, what's the date?" In fact, I didn't want to just attend this dinner, I told Rick. I wanted to speak with him on Johnny's behalf. Over the years, and I would like to think the maturation process, I have come to have a deeper and more heartfelt respect for John Lee, and am thankful for the many things he has done for me. 2 days ago, I received a call and a subsequent email from Jim Phils. As most of you know, Jim was Harvard's heavyweight and tri-captain of the team along with Andy McNerney, our senior year of college in 1983. Jim was an outstanding wrestler, and the first Harvard wrestler to win the Eastern since John Harkness did it in 1938. Jim asked that I read this toast to Johnny Lee. For John Lee, Hall of Fame induction, April 15th, 2000. I wish that on this auspicious occasion, I could be here in person to celebrate and pay tribute to Johnny Lee. However, I know that he can feel my pain at having to miss this event, as well as my pride in the recognition of his wrestling accomplishments and contributions. For the one thing that I remember most about Johnny is his tremendous and unparalleled sense of empathy for his athletes. I recall the way he cringed and winced every time one of us was taken down. I remember the way he celebrated and announced our pins. "Geez, that's right now, you got him engulfed, enmeshed, entangled, isolate." You had to be there, guys, but I can still see the way he writhed and twisted him outside, pantomiming every lateral drop and arm throw I ever did. So given Johnny's capacity to feel and anticipate every move, I know that Johnny can sense my gratitude for 4 great seasons, as well as the salute that I send from 3,000 miles away. Congratulations, Coach Jim Phils. Before I turn over the mic to Rick, I do want to talk a bit more about Johnny and why I personally feel he is so deserving of this tribute tonight. As I was sitting there, I realized that this is a very personal account of my experience and relationship with Johnny, but I think it's symbolic of how many of us feel. Let me say bluntly that being the coach of the Harvard wrestling team in his era was a very, very difficult task. I first came to visit Harvard because of a close friend's interest in the school and a letter that came to my house from a former Harvard captain, Mark Fowler. I had won the New York State Championship 2 times, and as a senior in high school, Mark knew I was considering Harvard and encouraged me to go. At that time, I can't tell you how many people said to me, "If If you go to Harvard, that will be the end of your wrestling career. You will never win a national championship. Well, to me, the opportunity to attend Harvard was like winning a national championship, and I knew if I turned it down, it wouldn't come around again. Besides, I was very stubborn and idealistic, and I figured, well, let them think what they want. My goal is to go to Harvard and win the nationals. If Jim Bennett could do it at Yale, why couldn't I do it at Harvard? So I went to visit Harvard, and I was stunned at how much I actually really liked the students I met, the environment of Cambridge, and I liked the coach, Johnny Lee. He was a lightweight, he had gone to Harvard, he seemed to like me, and he had won the freestyle national championship. As a freshman, I don't think I was prepared for some of the unforeseen challenges at Harvard, that in retrospect my coach, John Lee, had been dealing with for his entire career. You see, being a wrestler at Harvard at the time was like being some sort of beast that nobody there could understand. Furthermore, there was this underlying sentiment that athletics, and particularly excelling at athletics, was something other colleges should put their energies into. Harvard was clearly not interested in their reputation as a bastion of academic excellence being clouded by athletes excelling. As a freshman, I went to one football game where the band's antics were the main attraction. There was actually a cheer that went like this after the other team scored each touchdown. That's all right, that's okay, you're gonna work for us someday. At the time, I didn't have the sense of humor to laugh, and honestly, I was ashamed of Harvard. And Johnny could understand that. At one point, I was told outright by someone in the administration that Harvard was an academic institution and my interest in excelling athletically was not very high on the agenda of things they were supporting. On my first trip to the Coast Guard tournament as a freshman, I will never forget a senior member of our team talking about what he was going to do that night after he was eliminated from the tournament. I was just a freshman, but it had never occurred to me that I might not be in the finals. So, you can see these were some of the forces and attitudes that Johnny Lee was coaching under and dealing with. Probably that's how Johnny developed his razor-sharp sense of humor that anybody that knows him knows is sharp. My sophomore year, second year, Andy McNerney and Jim Phils came to Harvard. We and Johnny Lee were committed to putting Harvard on the wrestling map. In his own subtle and quiet way, Johnny did things for all of us. He went out of his way to find all of us workout partners to help us grow. He sent me down to the Boston YMCU to meet Jim Peckham for more coaching, and he introduced me to the wrestling phenomenon, Rod Butchery, who became a great teacher, mentor, and friend. Rod used to come to practice, I'll never forget my freshman year, and he would start with me, and he would go through the entire Harvard lineup to heavyweight, and by the time he got to the middleweights and heavyweights, everybody had something to study for, they were hurt, and they were gone. So I kind of stuck around and became Rod's workout partner. For the uncoachable, unorthodox, independent wizard, Andy McNerney, he brought in Alex Steinberg and Jim Bennett. Johnny created an atmosphere in the room where outsiders were always welcome, and he made us well aware of the rich history of Harvard wrestling that included people like Harvard's only collegiate national champion, John Harkness. Ed Bordley, who was a senior my freshman year, was blind and came to practice every day with his guide dog, Greta. Ed truly helped me to see there was more to life than wrestling, and he had a record of better than 500. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't forget the spiritual underbelly of Harvard wrestling, Doctor of Chemistry and Medicine, Rick Sullivan. Johnny, on his own, found a way to keep us traveling and competing and sent us to the Midlands and the Freestyle Nationals. We did not have an assistant coach. Above all, I think we all knew that how much of Johnny's heart and soul went into Harvard wrestling and how much he really cared about all of us as both people and athletes. We really wanted to win for him. It took time, but our team began to shine. In our senior year, Andy McNerney placed 4th in the NCAA, Jim won the Easterns, I did unusual things, like was the only Harvard wrestler to beat Nebraska's 18-pounder when they came to town. With the current success of the Harvard program, which we're all very proud of, and overall change in attitude towards athletics in the university, I think it is very, very important to recognize the enormity of Johnny's coaching feat in his final years. Personally, I went through my own difficulties and lost in the semis of the Easterns as a senior, and there went my dream of winning the NCAA and being a Harvard graduate. I was so dismayed by this fact that I kept wrestling through '84 and moved to Iowa and wrestled for Dan Gable in the Hawkeye Wrestling Club and trained for the Olympics. 1 year after graduation from Harvard, I did win the National Olympic Qualifying Tournament in Iowa City. That night, after the celebrations went over, I went back to my room and it was about 3 a.m. and I knew the appropriate thing to do, especially because it was 3 a.m., was to call up Johnny Lee. I told him, "Coach, I did it for you, I did it for Harvard, and I did it for myself." I made sure to wear my raggedy, battle-torn Harvard sweatshirt on the award stand, and I sent a copy of the photo to Johnny Lee. In his own inimitable way, Johnny Lee is a great person, very deserving of this honor tonight. He is the foundation on which Harvard wrestling sits, and I thank him and honor him for being above all things himself.
I'm just going to add a few words. In September of '45, John Lee started his freshman year at Exeter. Not long afterwards, he was advised by a basketball coach that his scrappiness might be more useful in wrestling. At that time, there were no wrestling camps, no instructional videos, and in New England, damn few coaches. Only 2 public high schools in Massachusetts had, to my knowledge, wrestling teams. There was a small group wrestling at the Union under George Myerson, but local competition was hard to find. And this is the environment in which John began to wrestle. He brought the NCAA wrestling rule book and noticed that over a few years, Iowa Teachers College had been number 1 or number 2. And so he wrote to the coach, Dave McCuskey, and asked if he could work out with his team over the summer. Receiving an affirmative answer, he found a summer job at a grocery store near Iowa Teachers and spent every possible minute wrestling with the best competition in America for 2 summers. The net result was that he won the National AAU Championship in 1951 as a sophomore at Harvard at 121 pounds in a weight class with 5 former or future national champions. He was 4th in the NCAA as a junior and 3rd as a senior, beating an Iowa State teachers wrestler in the consolation finals and costing Iowa State dearly in the team race. He also finished 4th in the Olympic trials of 1952 at 125.5 pounds, a weight he could make too easily to be completely effective. All in all, a career only slightly less likely than an Olympic medal-winning Guatemalan speed skater. But it is as a coach that I know John best. There were 2 outstanding characteristics of the experience of wrestling at Harvard while John was coached. Number 1, anyone was welcome. I was a member of his first team, the 1956 freshman team, with a lifetime high school record of 13-9. I had never won anything, not even my league, yet I was treated as if I had been a Pennsylvania high school champion, and this was true of everyone who wrestled for John. The other characteristic that was striking about John's wrestling practices is that they were fun. He insisted, I think, more accurately than Jim Phils described it, that the proper state for a Harvard wrestling opponent should be best described by the 4 E's: enmeshed, admired, engulfed, and encased. Said with great vehemence. Even when it was necessary to find fault, he could do it gently. A wrestler who might be putting out less than maximum effort would find his, quote, unquenchable thirst for work held up as an example for the others to emulate, and would thereby find himself forced into working hard. While never recruiting widely and without any help from the admissions office, he consistently fielded capable teams, culminating in the 1983 team of which you've heard so much. To paraphrase Isaac Newton, who wrote, "If I have seen further, it is because I have stood in the shoulder of giants. I would say if wrestling in Massachusetts and Harvard progresses, as I expect they will, it is because we have stood on the shoulders of giants, even if one of them only weighed 121 pounds.
Thank you, Rick. Now that I've reached a point in life where I've got a lot more yesterdays than tomorrows, an award like this is really very heartening. I really want to thank the committee for including me in this induction. It's certainly something I will never forget. Since I retired from Harvard in 1986, I've been living in Holmes Beach, Florida, retired. And the word retirement always reminds me of a statement issued by former Houston Oilers football coach Tom Phillips. Somebody asked Tom, "What do you do now that you're retired?" Tom answered, "Nothing, and I don't start till noon." It's very gratifying to see the large number of former Harvard wrestlers, associates I had with Harvard, and even some friends there at the front table that had nothing to do with wrestling that took the time to come to this affair. I feel very honored and humbled by that. My wife was unable to make the trip up yesterday from Florida, as she is a triathlete, and unfortunately she was on her bicycle and struck by an elderly Florida driver Thursday afternoon. Banged up pretty thoroughly, I should say. It was not life-threatening, but it put the damper on coming up here, unfortunately. And I'm certainly sorry about that. While I'm up there, I want to recognize basically three people. In my 32 years of coaching at Harvard, the finest wrestler I had was Andrew Patrick McNerney. And his performance the highlight of my coaching career was Andrew's performance at the 1983 National Collegiate Tournament in Oklahoma City. He lost the third place match to Harlan Kistler from the University of Iowa 10-9. And I think it was the only match that he lost where his hearing disability really bothered him, and he was deaf. And on his way to the third place match, he defeated wrestlers from Oklahoma State, and Iowa State, all in the same afternoon. And as one coach that came to me, Stan Abel, who was the Oklahoma University coach, said, "How many guys from High could beat Oklahoma State, and Iowa State the same day?" I'd also like to recognize the current Harvard coach, Jay Weiss. Jay, would you stand up? Jay has done a masterful job with the program. We had 2 All-Americans this year, and selfishly, I like to think that I'm somewhat responsible for Jay getting the job at Harvard. And we're in awfully good hands, and the only way is up. And in closing, I'd just like to relate something I heard a couple of weeks ago, which is not a wrestling matter at all. But Meyer Lansky was the father of sports betting in Nevada. And one day Meyer was standing on the corner with a friend of his when they noticed 2 guys racing to reach a bus. Meyer, always a bettor, said to his buddy, "Who do you think will get to the bus first, the tall guy or the short guy?" Meyer's buddy said, "Oh, I think the tall guy." Well, it turned out the short guy got there first. And Meyer's buddy said, "Oh, how do you know that the short guy got there first?" Meyer answered, "I didn't, but I knew you'd be wrong." Again, thanks very much for coming. I really appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, our next inductee, our final inductee of the evening, is George Bossi from here in Lowell. Many of you will agree that it's always dangerous to try to characterize one's achievements simply by statistics. But the statistics in this case are overwhelming. 40 years of coaching, 10 state titles, 4 New England titles, a record of 534, 84, and 7, which comes out to a winning percentage of about 86% over 40 years. Coach Bossi has coached 55 individual state champions, 19 New England champions. He's been the Massachusetts Coach of the Year 8 times, the National Coach of the Year twice. But more than these statistics, as incredible as they are, those of you from Lowell know that George Bossi has had a profoundly positive impact on the lives of hundreds of young men that he has coached in those 40 years. Whether it was by serving as a father figure to those who need it, or by teaching to others the life-impacting traits of self-discipline, hard work, and perseverance, George Bossi has been able to do what few in this world are ever capable of doing or could ever hope to do. And that is to take young boys, and as they mature, make them young men of character. He taught those of us he coached to believe what another great coach always believed. Vince Lombardi always said, the only place success comes before work, the only place success comes before work is in the dictionary. George Bossi lived and breathed that. For those of you from Harvard, those of you from outside Lowell, who don't know Coach Bossi particularly well, George Bossi is a most unusual individual. George Bossi is one of a kind. And as you probably know from watching the media, top 10 lists are in vogue these days. And here is a top 10 list very quickly of George Bossi's most favorite expressions. Coming in at number 10. Hey fellas, we got guys who can't chew gum and walk in a straight line at the same time. Number 9. Hey fellas, you can't make chicken salad out of chicken. You can fill in the rest. Number 8. Hey listen, I'm not gonna name names, all right? I don't do that. That's not my style. But we got guys who are going through the motions. McQuaid, Nolan, Haley. The 7th most famous expression of George Bossi, hey, he's beating the tar out of you, son. Your parents are in the stands. Number 6, wherever the team bus from Lowell was going, whether it was to Boston or Springfield or New Hampshire, to the bus driver he said, hey driver, 110, right? The beach road, right? 110. Number 5, hey look at this guy, fellas, as he pointed to someone in the room who he thought he was giving a compliment to, but didn't come out quite that way. Fellas, 30 guys in the room last year, fellas. Number 30's a state champ this year. Not bad, fellas, not bad. Number 4. Hey, listen. He said this to me, I'll never forget it my senior year. Hey, listen. I'm not going to put any pressure on you, all right? But you lose, we lose. Number 3, hey fellas, these guys from Billerica, they're tough. They're in their backyard, fellas, fixing their cars. They don't even use jacks, fellas, they use their arms. And these guys from Tewksbury, They're living in tar paper shacks out on 38, fellas. They're tough. You guys are playing with the Atari all night. Number 2, as we got to a tournament and found out that there was a 2-pound allowance. Hey, coach, how come these guys got to eat? We didn't. Hey, listen. They sent me the information and I lost it, all right? And the number 1 most famous expression of George Bossi: when the going gets tough, fellas, Lowell gets going. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of all those who benefited from George Bossi's coaching, I want to say a special thank you to his family. His 3 sons are here, some of his 8 grandchildren are here. Anyone who knows wrestling knows the time commitment involved. And for those of us who benefited, please know that many, many lives were changed for the better because of your father and your grandfather. As I thought about George Bossi's coaching career, I was reminded of a television commercial from years ago. Perhaps you'll remember it. The catchphrase was, "When you say Budweiser, you said it all." Ladies and gentlemen, when you say Lowell High Wrestling, the name George Bossi says it all. Our 6th and final inductee, Mr. George Bossi.
It's fantastic. Great introduction. I don't think I said those things. I want to thank the committee for selecting me. It's a great honor to be up here with the distinguished honorees. A lot of them are good friends of mine. I just want to tell Jim Peckham, I'm not going to beat your record, Jim. But I'm going to be up here a little bit because I have a lot of people I like to recognize. First of all, my family, my son Mark and his wife Maureen, and my grandson Trevor, right over here on my left. Next to Mark, I have my son Jeff and his lovely wife Cindy. And next to Cindy, my daughter-in-law Jane, my son Michael, and my grandson Matthew. My good friend Calvin, my companion, and next to my son Mike. Thank you. I just want to mention a few things about my fellow honorees. John Lee at Harvard. Those Sunday practices, they were fantastic. We used to come down until Cornell. I don't know, somebody at Cornell, I guess, said something and all of a sudden they stopped. But I remember a meet with University of Massachusetts at the Harvard gym. And my son was wrestling for UMass. Stevie Beati was wrestling for Harvard. And the referee was late. The referee coming up from Jersey. So I'm in the stands. I'm a fan. I'm not even dressed. John comes up to me, George, will you do the match? And here I get 3 Lowell kids. My son and 2 Lowell kids, I believe, Scotty McQuaid was in the lineup. I had a referee to me. So trying to put me in the hot seat. That was tough, and I don't think I gave the kids a break, and everything went good. But you know what, John? I haven't got paid yet. Bill White, colleague, fellow official, one of the most solid officials I ever met. Tough as nails. We could never influence that guy. He made a call, and he stood by it. Never lost his cool. My good friend Howard Crozier, we've been competing since 1960 when I was coaching at Winnicott. But one night, Howard, I got a call about 2 a.m. Howard Crozier's on the line. George, we have a change in time. Make sure the official gets there at 7 o'clock. He says, Howard, it's 2 a.m. Oh no, I got to get this thing in. Howard forgot the time, he had a reminder, and Howard being what he is, well, we made a change. And the other great thing with North Andover was a great match in 1984 when we were at the field house, and the Lawrence paper really wrote this thing up, and fortunately we won the meet, but I never forget it. It was a great streak which they had, 106 wins, and we were fortunate to be able to compete and end that streak. But it was a great for wrestling in the area. Some of the major influences that I've had. My first coach, Doug Parker. If it wasn't for Doug Parker, I wouldn't be standing here today. Because when I came to Springfield, I was all football. And Doug got me into wrestling. And you know what, Doug? That cross-face series still works. It's still useful. My next influence was at the University of Illinois when I was a grad assistant. I was under the famous coach, B.R. Patterson, and I ran the first high school wrestling tournament I ever ran, and that's where I got the expertise of wrestling tournaments. And Patterson let me do everything, and it's been going on ever since. Another influence was Sprig Gardner, the famous coach from Long Island, Mepham High School. I spent a week with him, and I learned the philosophy of which I use today, how to motivate kids, how to coach wrestling, and that's been a big factor in my success. Another peer person I want to recommend to mention is Ted Seabrook, the great coach at Phillips Exeter Academy. When I got started at Winnicott, he's the one that showed me a lot of stuff that we use today, and a contestant or an athlete of his, John Irving, who you may know, just got an Academy Award recently. John was a co-captain of the team, and he defeated one of my better guys, Alan Griffin, 5-3. So it shows you how wrestling has the parameters. They're unbelievable. Next is another person, Hep Evans, the Governor Academy. Hep and I took the Granby role in 1968. We saw it at the Nationals. How do these guys do these things? And we went over this thing, broke it apart, and we figured it out, and we've been Granby ever since. And next is another reason why I'm here is Al Mangan, former athletic director of Lowell High, went to Michigan State, a great friend of Finley Collins, he coached there. Al brought me into Lowell, and in the Old Worthen, which is a little bar in the center of town, next to City Hall, I was hired. On a handshake. Last but not least, my good friend who's now deceased, Homer Barr from the University of Massachusetts. Homer and I had a great relationship. After Homer had a hard time recruiting kids from his home state of Pennsylvania, they just couldn't take the life at UMass, I suppose. They didn't, UMass was a pretty fast place. And anyway, Homer was up there and he started recruiting Lowell kids. The Lowell kids could take that fast pace, they stuck it out. And we had a great summer clinics and tournaments, and a place for Lowell High wrestlers to go after high school, a place where they can wrestle. I like to recognize some of the families which I coached. And when you get 5 or 6 kids from one family who wrestle for you, that says something. I like to mention the Kakalas family, Ted, George, Jim, and Steve. Dylan's on Bigelow Street, Brian, Mike, Gary, and Tom. And the Quains, also on Bigelow Street, with 3 state champions on the family, Earl, Bill, Scott, Warren, and Jay. On Marlborough Street, up in the Highlands, Phil, Dave, and Steve. There's 3 state champs in that family. Conroy. Dawn, Dave, and Phil. Phil's our volunteer assistant, comes in every time. Still staying in shape, chasing down all the delinquents of Lowell. What about the Quigleys on Belmont Street? Kenny, Dave, Richard, Stephen, and Vinny. The Ryans, Bill, Rick, and Sean. All the Finns, Larry, Bill, Tim, and Eric. The Quigleys of South Lowell, Jim and John. 3 state champions between those 2 guys. The Brulettes, Bob and Bruiser, John. The Kennedys, Jim and Mike. I'll never forget Mike Kennedy against Bethune. We're losing the meet. Actually, I'm sorry, I'll take that back. We're winning the meet. Mike never probably won a match in his life, but he's wrestling their best guy. And this is before the tech fall. The stud there from Bethune couldn't put my guy away. Mike could stay off his back. Instead of getting the tech fall, they just got the 3 points. For the fall, we win the meet 19-18 because Kennedy refused to quit, refused to go down. Recognize some of my contemporaries. Chet Steele of Weston. Randy Whitehead of Chelmsford. Karen Mariano of Quincy. Frank Ball, Melrose. Frank's over here. Frank and I will drive referees crazy. A couple of refs packed it in after they did a Lowell Melrose match. Larry Tremblay of Winchester. One of the great coaches in the state. Eric Moyer of Wayland. Wrestling Wayland. One evening up at the Robinson Gym, the full house, we had riding time at the time. I never forget this. And when you're in the riding time, you get a minute of riding time, you get a team point, or a match point, and if you're under a minute, of course, you don't get anything. Well, we had the riding time, it was like a minute, 60.1 seconds. The kid I have on the table picks up the clock, riding time for Lowell, he picks it up, the arrow goes now from 16 seconds to 59. Referee comes over, no riding time. Wayland wins the meet, the match, they win the meet. Needless to say, I wrote a 10-page letter to the National Rules Committee after that meet, and riding time was dropped. True story, riding time was dropped. But these are the things that happen in high school wrestling. I'd like to mention Bob Fitzgerald Sr. from Lawrence. Bob Fitzgerald was the coach when I first started at Lowell. We had some great memories. Bob was the guy that stuck up for me at a coaches meeting, even though we were bitter enemies during the season, big rivals. He stuck up for me in a coaches meeting, and I'll never forget that. Father John McLaughlin over here from Woburn. Father John, before he was a father, I knew him as John McLaughlin. I don't want to embarrass Father John. Another Shore from Burlington. And last but not least, my fellow colleague who just retired as Commissioner of Officials, Eric Turner, former coach of North Reading and Secretary-Treasurer of the Massachusetts Interscholastic Wrestling Officials Association. I'd like to just mention some of the unsung heroes which I coached. 1968, Dennis Bisson. Pinned his way, lost his first match, pinned his way all through the wrestlebacks. We won the state, it's our first one. Dennis took a third in the state that year. 1974, up in Brockton, an unsung wrestler named Donnie Brill, who's now deceased, placed fourth, wrestling over his head. 1973, JV wrestler, behind a great wrestler, Max Desilets. I moved Max up a way, put in Shane, Shane takes the third. We win the state tournament. 1980, the year we had the 5 state champs. Gary Chase, just an average wrestler, took an alternate from the sections, takes a third in the state tournament. And in 1989, we get a defensive fall in the consolation semis from Derek Heath, putting us in the lead for the state tournament. And in 1974, we had a sophomore named Bill McQuaid, who substituted. I don't know how I worked that one out, but it was a true story. Substituted for Timmy Fallon, who was injured. Billy placed, earning a spot for Timmy. And Billy was elated over the feat. Billy went on to wrestle varsity for us for the University of Massachusetts. I'd like to just read a letter here to let you know what I think wrestling is all about, what high school coaching is all about. And it's from a wrestler that I had about 10 years ago while he was studying for exams. And evidently he just wanted to thank me. Instead of thank me in person, he thanked me in writing. And I'll just read the letter as, Dear Coach, I'm between exams and been waiting to thank you for the 4 years experience I had wrestling at Lowell High School. Growing up in sports, I was often overlooked by my coaches because I wasn't the most athletic, quickest, or biggest kid in the team. I usually got cut. If I made the team, I usually sat on the bench and didn't play much. At Lowell High School, I heard that you were a tough coach, but fair, and that you didn't cut anybody. I decided maybe I'd have a chance to come out for wrestling. What a revelation. The practices were grueling. I never worked so hard in my life. I saw why you didn't cut anybody. Half the kids quit after the first practice. But you know what, Coach? You made the practices meaningful, interesting, and challenging. We learned a lot. For the first time in my life, someone noticed me. You encouraged me and respected me. I responded by working my butt off for you. I started to experience some success. The hard work was paying off. You put me in the lineup. I was wrestling varsity for Lowell High. What an opportunity. I was elated. I didn't win many matches. I was never a champion, but I gave it my best. I'm in college now, giving it my best. I'm majoring in education and hope to become a secondary school teacher. The lessons of life that you taught me are becoming a reality. Commitment, dedication, hard work really do pay off. I'm doing well at school with a GPA of 3.4 and hope to graduate in 2 years. Coach, I thank you again for encouraging me, for motivating me, for making my high school wrestling experience something I'll never forget. Good luck and continued success. I think this sums up what high school coaching is all about. It's more than the wins and losses. I think we develop character, we develop a respect for authority, we develop a lot of character that you heard Colin Kilray mention, and this is what makes me proud to be the coach of Lowell High School and the coach of all you people who showed up here tonight. Thank you for the honor.
Blacknick was the guy who was shown over and over again on national television. When he won the gold medal, fell to his knees, tears of victory shed from his face, and hugged his coach. ABC showed that over and over again. One of the great stories of American sport. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jeff Blacknick.
This up to a heavyweight size. Normally I say man size, but I'm at Lowell. I'll be very careful. You know, I am from New York, and I do have the opportunity to cover a lot of different wrestling events. And you know, one could make the argument that Massachusetts has the best quality wrestling in the country. But I'll guarantee you one thing. There's no competing with you when it comes to wrestlers talking at this microphone. None. Anyway, how many Springfield people are in here? You know, there's quite a few, and I'm a very lucky product of that school. And I was a state champion coming out of high school, and I quite frankly, after being given Dan Gable's book, along with a medallion indicating I was a state champion, thought I'd be going D1. And I guess coaches at that time took a look at Erlen Van Liftfield and looked at me and said, you gotta wrestle that. But in a way, that's what really turned me on about the sport of wrestling. Growing up as a pudgy little kid, growing up to be a pudgy little kid, but having a desire to want to tangle with what most people consider monsters. And I thrived on it. And I thrived on it because I saw it as a mental challenge more than I did a physical one. So for me, it was pretty easy to get by that physical aura of a bigger heavyweight. I never had a problem with that, but apparently the coaches did. And the one school that did give me a very nice offer, and one that I'll forever be thankful for, is Springfield College. And I still have letters that Coach Parker sent me prior to me attending Springfield College. And it was the kind of individual that touched me from the moment he spoke. And I always thank him for the leadership that he gave me while I attended that school. Coach knows people. He may not know all the wrestling in the world, but he knows people. And I had the opportunity to train under Gable or a Peckham or a Bobby Douglas or a Stan Desick at the national camps every summer. And he realized he was a little bit perhaps outgunned by the coaching that I was receiving. But that never got in his way of coaching me. And I, again, Doug, just want to thank you for everything you provided to me at Springfield College. And perhaps his greatest thing that he gave me wasn't so much, direct motivation of sorts. It was how he handled people. And just to give you an idea how he did this, and I consider him a very crafty coach. It was the winter time, and we had this old field house, which would later be condemned my senior year of school. And one of the windows in his offices somehow managed to get open, and he unlocked his office. We walked in, and immediately are met with this cold air. Now, most coaches would say, hey, Glenn, go shut the window. But he would look at me and go, hey, Jeff, God, it's cold in here, isn't it? What would I do? I'd look around, hey, the window's open. And I'd go over and I'd shut it. The man never asked. He found a way to get me to go ahead and think for myself. I think a self-motivated athlete is probably the one you want to worry about. Another person that had a pretty big impact on me was my freshman year. I met a guy by the name of Murray from Coast Guard. He was an All-American. Him and Erlen were getting into this Division III feud all the time. I happened to beat Murray in the semifinals of the New England's that year to face Erlen in the finals, where I would lose. I never did beat that big guy. And somebody came up to me after that finals and talked with me, wearing this red Olympic coat with this emblem of the rings on his chest. And that was Jim Peckham. And that was my first time I met that individual. And I can't tell you the impact that had on me, thinking somebody of national caliber was looking at Jeff Blatnick, when most people didn't look at Jeff Blatnick when I had won the state title. The other thing that Jim would do would be, senior year, part of the protocol at Springfield is to go student teach. I chose a town called Woburn, only to be corrected, Woburn. And I'll always remember going to the gas station and asking where Deadham is. I'm from New York. I never even heard of a grinder before. So things were different. And he brought me out here, and I got introduced to the Union, where one of my first practices, as I'm getting dressed, I'm watching a guy taking a shower, wearing a mask, flippers, and a snorkel. I go through my entire practice and go down to change into my clothes. The man was still under the shower. And he talks to me about your body being a temple. He talks to me about the things that you should do with your diet, how you can improve yourself as a person. After those Boston Union practices, he took me around the corner to a bar called Jake's, fed me dark beer and knockwurst. And I thank him for it. Last but not least, he says you got to practice move 1,000 times to know what you're doing, 3,000 times to know you can do it in a match. Make it a reflex. Minutes before I was to wrestle, and by the way, thank you for pointing out I took third at 220. In the wrestlebacks for the finals of that team, he would pull me aside. This guy had a way of doing a drag and got kind of behind me, and he says, Next time he does it, don't fight the drag. As he comes around, lock the arm, and as he goes to bring you down, arm throw. And in my first move, trying an arm throw, I would change the outcome of that match, wind up beating this guy, and wind up making the Junior World Freestyle team. So those who say it can't be done in a hurry, it's not totally accurate, though I would like to approach it from the standpoint of what he says. One, you have to earn the right to win. Secondly, you do have to practice an awful lot. There's another guy in here who happened to be a teammate of mine a long time ago. His name is Larry Tremblay. And you know, I found it kind of ironic is most of the time while I was at Springfield College, he was a 134 pounder. Larry, why don't you stand up? Not a hair over 200 Technically, he's a heavyweight now. But he used to avoid me on the mat, mainly because he was a lot smaller at the time. But there was a time when he couldn't wait to be at the mat with me. And that was during 1984. He and Frank Carino, who else was out there with him? Bob Skelton from the Western New England College. They were all out there. And I was happy to take my picture with them at a very happy time. You know, I'm a motivational speaker. I make a living doing that. I also have the opportunity to get some of the best seats in wrestling and actually describe the wrestling action. Hopefully I give the wrestlers their due. But in terms of being a speaker, I like to bring up basically what's called conflict. Because we all go through it, whether personally or with another person, another individual. And I found several scenarios I want to share with you, one of which was I won an Olympic gold medal when I was 27 years old. And many people think that might be the pinnacle of a lifetime, something that Kendall Cross just experienced. Accept challenge, perform well, and to persevere. And when I got married, it was very clear because I had a relapse of cancer in 1985 and 86. I would receive 6 months of chemotherapy, and that pretty much rendered me impotent. I would be unable to have children. But wrestling taught me those 3 lessons. And I did accept challenge. I did persevere. And I was able to perform well. We now have 2 children. Ian the boy, Nikki the girl. I can't wait to get into the gender equity argument now that I have one of each. I certainly want my girl to have the opportunity to participate in sport, but not at the cost of my son Ian if he wants to be a wrestler. And it reminds me of an analogy about being on a cliff. And you're halfway up and you found a spot on that cliff where you're fairly secure, but it is rolling a storm. Yeah, I could gut it out, wait 24 hours for that storm to go. Or I can let go of the safety that I have to move up and get out. And that's currently what wrestling is facing. We're going to have to let go of what we have and face where we're going to have to go and move forward, hopefully with some confidence. I don't think this is going to be an easy proposition, but it is going to take spirit. And if there's one thing that Springfield College taught me was spirit, mind, and body. We each are made up of that. You can educate the mind, you can train the body, but it's the spirit that's the fuel that makes those other realms work. Because we all know that the most talented don't always win. Sometimes it's the people who want it the most. That is the situation where I see ourselves in the sport of wrestling. Some of what is lost may never come back. But what we can do is stop whatever losses we have incurred and continue to nurture the grassroots level. The people like George Bossi, the people that you people are most familiar with here in the Lowell area that had such a huge impact on the kids in this area. Well, there's a lot of people in Massachusetts who have that kind of impact, and that's going to be the strength of the sport of wrestling. If we continue to generate quality individuals in our high schools, that's going to translate to more numbers, which is going to irrefutably change what's going on in our college system. The other is, as a motivational speaker, I suppose I should have a definition of motivation. To To me, it's a spectrum. On one side you have fear, on the other side you have passion. I ran cross country in high school, if you can believe that. I don't look like what most people think of when they think of someone running long distances real fast. But you would be surprised how fast I would run if somebody pointed a gun at me. Just as you would be surprised at your own actions if you had a loved one trapped in a dangerous situation. You'd risk danger to save that individual. Both are elements of motivation. My last comments to you here is a story that emphasizes this point. It's a game called Capture the Flag. And what we used to use as no man's land, that territory that you had to cross, was a 4-lane highway. Now this didn't go over very well with our parents. This is back when we were in 3rd or 4th grade. And I came up with a harebrained idea. Because guess what position I normally got stuck with playing Capture the Flag? Babysitting the flag. Because I was large and easily spotted and even more easily run down. So my game consisted of 3 hours staring at a piece of cloth on the trunk of a tree, not knowing what was going on. I got bored. It's the reason I got into wrestling. I was a basketball player and I would have ridden the bench and gotten splitters in my butt watching people play. Or I could get some mat burns on my elbows and knees, try wrestling, hopefully make the team, get a chance to compete. I'd always said I would rather participate and lose than watch and win. So I went to my friends and I said, hey, I got this idea. Let's cross over the highway, cut through the cemetery, cross the creek behind them. We'll come in from a direction they'd never expect. And my friends looked at me and said, well, you go first. I said, fine, no problem. And so I take off. It's after dinner. It's getting dark. I get up to the highway. There's not a car in sight. Cross over the highway. I start running through the cemetery. Again, it's getting dark, and it happens. I fell into a 6-foot hole. I jumped. I can't get to the top. Now I'm starting to get scared. I look in my corner. I start to pull myself up. I weigh a little too much. Boom, root pulls out of the wall. Right back down to the bottom. Now I am scared. I back up and I get ready to yell for help, and it dawns on me. Who is going to answer a call for help from a 6-foot hole in a cemetery? I backed into a corner. I was so scared, hoping no one's going to sneak up on me. And I prayed one of my friends would come. And sure enough, a minute later I hear footsteps. I get ready to yell for help. Falls on the other side of the wall. Now, any of you that know Steve Martin know what the terms happy feet meant. I swear to God, my friend, his name was Jeff too, his feet never touched the ground, they were moving so fast. He was jumping and jumping, he couldn't get to the top of the hole. I could hear his breathing getting ragged as he started to really, in effort, desperation, try to get out. And then he saw that root sticking out of the wall. He runs over and grabs it, starts to pull himself up, goes back down to the bottom of the hole, and at this point I couldn't contain myself. I walk up, tap him, and go, hey, I tried that and it didn't work. Bang! He jumped out of the hole in a heartbeat. Fear is a powerful motivator. But there's something I found out about fear. You had to wait and be prodded into action. Something had to stimulate you, a no-choice situation, before you took action. And what always puzzled me was, if you just found out you had the skill to get out of that hole through fear, why can't you call on those same skills on command, when I want them, when I need them? I think it's the difference between those that ride the peak and valley train and those that hug the ridgeline of success, those that understand what their skills truly are. And if there's one thing I learned from the sport of wrestling besides the perseverance joke was, I can. I can. I don't know how, but I know I can. And I thank the sport of wrestling, especially in the hardest times of my life, which is when I had a question about whether or not I was going to live. The thought didn't stay in my head very long because the sport taught me that as long as I can go out there and do it, I'll continue to do it. And I never faced that word death. But there was always that nagging question, particularly with the relapse. And the one thing I learned from my battle with cancer, and this is the resolve we're going to need for the sport of wrestling, After I was finished with treatment and returned to competition, people who I used to beat easily were now giving me tough matches. And the people I had tough matches with were now beating me. And it used to be a hard thing not to see your name up there on the scoreboard after you become accustomed to seeing it there. But more importantly, once people found out I had cancer, I started hearing their comments as I walked by after one of these losses. And they were shaking their heads saying, "Isn't it too bad what happened to him?" And what they did was gave me a built-in excuse. Perhaps the world's best excuse for family. Gee, he had cancer. And that only made me more strengthened in my resolve as to what it was I wanted most. Cancer tries to rob life, so it's not good enough to survive. It's only going to be a win if I do something with that opportunity. And likewise, we have an opportunity here in wrestling. Yeah, we've suffered a loss, but as most of you know, we've learned the most from the losses we've incurred in our careers. That's where we've gained the most experience, is through that kind of a trauma. So if we're already going through that kind of loss, such as our programs at the collegiate level, now's the time to turn it around. A commitment does not have an exit door. My commitment in '84 didn't include a way for me to lose with the world's best excuse, whether I had it or not. The only thing that mattered to me was making that Olympic team. The only thing that should matter to us now is making sure our sport survives for the next generation, just as it has throughout history. Perhaps that's the greatest thing I like about our sport, except for maybe the singlets and the kind of mat we wrestle on. Nothing's different. We still go at it the same way everyone always did in history. No gimmicks, no flashy show, just hardcore sport. In the end, I want to sum up how I feel about my sport and how I had my eyes open about it with this last little tidbit. Perhaps the greatest moment I had at the Olympics was the opening ceremonies. It's fun to win and all that, but the excitement around the opening ceremonies was really, for me, awesome. I had gone and made the 80 team only to go through a boycott, so for me, '84 was the first time I got the full-blown experience. And during this opening ceremonies, we're the host country, we're the last team introduced. So as we're walking through the LA Coliseum, the bowels of this building, this stone tunnel waiting to get out onto the infield, you can hear the roar above 105,000 people. I put my hand on that stone tunnel and it was vibrating, and it wasn't from an earthquake. And naturally, once we hit that infield, all that energy rolls over you. And I started popping up and looking around, Mom, Dad, TV camera, maybe. You know, let's have some fun during these opening ceremonies. And then I realized, I'm going to start competition tomorrow. Calm down. Get a hold of yourself. You'll have all the time in the world to celebrate when it's over. And as I got composed, what happens? 2 ABC cameras descend 2 rows in front of me. It's Carl Lewis. And they're going to do What's It Like in the Opening Ceremonies interview. And I am dead center background. I'm going to make national television. I'm so excited about this, I nudged Sergeant Greg Gibson, drill sergeant in the Marine Corps, only man to medal in all 3 grappling disciplines at the world level, Sambo, freestyle, and Greco. And those that knew what kind of an awesome specimen of an athlete he was. And I gave him a nudge in the ribs and go, "Hey, Gib, we're lucky, we're standing next to Carl Lewis. We're going to get on national television." You know what this Marine said to me? "Lewis is lucky to be standing next to us. There's a guy with perspective." And I certainly hope when we think of great athletes, the name of wrestlers come to mind first. Because if the rest of the world isn't going to recognize the talent that our sport has, we've got to do it. And do it in a voice that's loud enough for everyone to hear. And once they hear, they'll understand. Have some voice. And tonight's a great example of thanking those around here. I had this around the Massachusetts area for their contributions. I had the great honor of being inducted into the Hall of Fame, National Hall of Fame, this past summer. And as a D2 athlete being passed over in D1 opportunity, it felt good to finally get that respect from all those in wrestling for what I thought they had passed over. But likewise, what you're doing here is making sure nothing gets passed over. And that's going to be the insurance we have for the future. So with that, I'd like to say thanks very much for the opportunity to address you here this evening. There's a lot of spirit in this room. Let's equate that spirit into action. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, the benediction from Father McLaughlin.
This is the only place that ever gives a priest 2 opportunities and a microphone. Before I give the final blessing, I just want to, there's a group of Lowell guys that have been making a lot of noise over there. Val, and you'd probably know the name. I want you guys to go over to the Harvard table there. That's the closest you'll ever get to Harvard. I am going to pay for that tonight. I do want to say that we are blessed as a wrestling community to have such great gentlemen here tonight. Gentleman is definitely a word that we should use. Bill White, a gentleman on the mat and off the mat. Johnny Lee, a man who could coach All-Americans and also first-year wrestlers. And an expression I always remember of Johnny is "res-like facial." Great man. We also have Tug, who is a class act, and Tug would, win or lose, had the same expression, a man of class and dignity. And George, a gentleman who coached everybody, not just his athletes in Lowell, but us as coaches. I remember one time at Johnny's bench, before I was a priest, it's a baseball place in town if you don't know it. It's where he taught me some things about coaching that I'll never forget, and which helped me a great deal. And he's a great man for the sport. And I think that we are all honored to be here with them all tonight and blessed, and we should give them all a hand. Finally, a man that gave us one of the greatest moments in wrestling sports history. And I think we forgot one thing as he knelt and he wept. He also asked God by blessing himself. And tonight, we ask Almighty God to bless all of you, Jeff and his family, Coach Lee's wife, that she may come back to health quickly. Bless you all for a safe journey home, and again, to come back to this banquet in a healthy way. We ask this to Almighty God. Amen.
So ladies and gentlemen, this has been a journey of destiny. 6 separate journeys. You've been so kind to indulge us on what has been a very long evening. Thank you. We'll hope to see you next year. Have a wonderful evening. You've been very kind. Thank you.